hace, pierna derecha, directo al arco, ¡golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
And good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today for October 19th, 2017. Duane, the new studio's opening in the next few days. My place now is pretty bare, and I only have my PlayStation left. But I have to say, last night I made quite a transfer in my FIFA career. I have Locatelli from Milan with Gillingham United. My League One team is getting pretty good, and you were mentioning to me how fair, Duane. There's a famous moment with Gillingham United because, well, I didn't know that before I decided because, well, they were blue, black, and white, and in the Premier League. In England, and looked kind of good, so I chose that team. But you were telling me a interesting moment of fame that Gillingham had.
Well, infamy anyway.
At least infamous moment, yeah.
For those that don't know, many will, some won't. Manchester City's second most famous game, and very similar, was against them in the League One playoffs back in the late 90s when City became the first team to have won a European Cup, the Cup Winners' Cup. They won it, I believe, in 1977 off the top of my head. They fell all the way down to the third tier of English football. The same time that United was winning the treble. City was sort of down there, flundering away, and they couldn't quite get promoted on their own. They did not get direct promotion. They had to go through the playoff, and in fact, they were losing the playoff final badly with not much time to go. Scored 2 goals in stoppage time against Paul Dickov. Scored the tying goal. If you YouTube that, it's I believe I will argue it is Manchester City's greatest goal of their career, of their history, because if that had not happened, nothing would have happened after that, because they would have probably just been still down there somewhere. So there you go.
In the Blue Conference, the Blue of Manchester in the Blue Conference somewhere. But no, it's interesting. We're talking about this because it's Europa League today. And yes, we'll talk about the Champions League and Europa League to start off the show. And in the second segment, we will talk about North America, a bit of MLS news, a bit of news on what's going on as well in the sport in our continent. But Duane, Champions League yesterday, let's start there. And we were saying yesterday, Chelsea-Roma would be a competitive game. Well, I don't think you were ever as right as you were yesterday. That game, 3-3, Chelsea takes a 2-goal lead. Roma comes back. Chelsea gets the go-ahead goal. Roma gets the equalizer. What a goal by Dzeko. What a game. Fascinating matchup at Stamford Bridge last night.
No, for sure. Look, and the Italian teams are fascinating this year, and I really keep meaning to book an Italian guest to talk about it. It's a very interesting sort of situation going on in Italy right now. Juve's down a little bit. Napoli is playing really, really well. Roma's kind of an interesting club there. The Milan sort of soap opera is a soap opera, and that's kind of fun. You know, Inter's kind of there. It's an interesting sort of season going on in Serie A. It might actually be the most compelling league right now in the world in terms of the top leagues. So that is something going on. And for Roma to sort of come back from that is sort of shows their strength and what they've done with a team that's kind of made up of pieces that they've grabbed from different places. And there's sort of like a lot of rejects on that team. And I see that kind of like lovingly, right?
That famous team of misfits, right? Those famous bunch of misfits that we all get along to. And I have the image of Nangolan when you say that. The Mohawk tattooed midfielder with a great long shot capabilities that got close a few times yesterday. No, I totally imagine.
Kolarov, Jakov. There's a lot.
Exactly. Kolarov and Dzeko, their chemistry yesterday, yes, they played together in Man City. But you saw that chemistry and that cross to Dzeko's goal. If you haven't seen that goal, this could arguably be the best goal scored in Europe this season.
Yeah, the great thing about being, this is maybe why I'm enjoying Serie A a little bit more than usual. And we're getting a little, we're having a bits and bites day, so we can get a little off topic.
Yeah, we had a heavy topics all week long, and like the crew, and we had like big things, and we're just taking it a little easy today.
Yeah, I mean, okay, yes, Roma has some City content there, so that's kind of why I might have a soft spot for them too. But they're also what I like about Serie A this year is because I am a free agent when it comes to Serie A. I can just sit back and watch it. I don't hate anyone in Serie A. Like, I don't hate Juve. I'll watch them. I have friends that support them, good friends that support them, whatever. I was cheering for them in Champions League finals. So, like, the big baddie I don't feel the same way about them as I feel about big baddies in other leagues. The teams that are chasing Napoli is so fun to watch. I always kind of had a soft spot for Milan. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's the strips because I think their strips are beautiful. Inners, they're an interesting team too. So I can watch a derby and not care either way and just enjoy it. So that's kind of why I think maybe I'm enjoying Serie A a little bit more than usual this year. But yeah, in the Champions League, that was a great matchup. Chelsea not having a great season domestically, but certainly in the Champions League, they have been making some noise there, and that maybe at this point, I don't know whether you're ready to give up on the title. It's a little early yet.
It's early, but it's not that early, Dwayne. It's like the three big teams in front of Chelsea in the two Manchester and Tottenham. Like, they're not going to be able. It's going to be tough to catch them all, but at least in Europe, even if with that draw yesterday, it's still a 2-win and a draw, undefeated in the group stage so far for Chelsea, and it's a top of the group situation, and Roma's performing well. But I mentioned Roma, and the Totti era is over, and we're clearly moving on to something different for Roma. But I was surprised by the character that team showed yesterday, even without Totti, which in our mind is like was the backbone and was the genesis of that character type of play that we used to see with Roma. And even without Totti, you still have that. And I said they actually took the lead. They came back from 2-0. They took the lead 3-2, and Chelsea got the equalizer. But still a Eden Hazard 2-goal, by the way, performance by Eden Hazard. We don't talk about Eden Hazard enough, Duane. You know what? It's true. We don't talk about Eden enough.
He is a brilliant talent that never quite got it together in his time as England when most people would remember him. Now, he was behind Aguero there and was kind of coming off the bench a little bit, scored City's
Hazard playing for Chelsea.
Goal, right? No, had they not, again, just like I said off the top of the show.
Not Aguero, though. We're talking about Eden Hazard, I was saying.
Oh, Hazard. Jacko, we were talking about a minute ago. Forgive me. Well, I have Jacko in the mind now. All that I just said stands. But Hazard is a brilliant player for sure. They had a whole conversation about Hazard on the Guardian Football podcast this week that sort of touched on the same sort of stuff that you're talking about, how he sort of gets forgotten as one of the great players around because a lot of the attention goes to Bale and Kane and players like that, and that's because they're in England. But nonetheless, they did actually say the exact same things you're saying. So this is a thought that I'm sure that the great minds think alike, right, Kevin?
Great minds, sure. Put me in a great minds conversation. But speaking of top players, I guess we have to talk about it. Messi yesterday scored his 100th goal in Europe. Only the second player ever to do so after Cristiano Ronaldo. 100 for Messi.
What I do, I can do better. Those two go back and forth doing those kind of marks all the time.
I wish I had it queued up. Everything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you.
Exactly. And they'll continue to fight it out right now. We thought at the start of the year that this might be Ronaldo and Real Madrid's year to shine and sort of put a marker down as being the best team ever. But nonetheless, Barcelona sort of fought back a little bit on that one too, Kevin. Just got to adjust my mic for a second, so I'm going to mute myself.
Dwayne's mic just fell off the face of his desk, but we'll have him back in a second. But
there you go.
You're back. All right. It happens, microphones and screws. It's not always an easy thing. Manchester United, Benfica. Yeah, it's only a 1-0 loss. 1-0 win. Jeez. But, still a great win. Manchester United able to perform on both front. And if we go back to our conversation in the beginning of their season in the Premier League, we're talking about it's going to be more difficult for Chelsea to be able to perform well domestically now having to play in Europe. They're performing well in Europe, but domestically it's not as good as the fans would have hoped. Manchester United, though, they are unable to perform on both fronts. Actually, 4 fronts with all the cups. And I am actually surprised because I have to say, was not convinced, Duane, by Lukaku's move to United. Not convinced by the re-signing of Ibra. Yeah, he's still injured. He's not back yet. But with all the move they made, Matic, I wasn't necessarily convinced. And well,
Mourinho has
they're proving me wrong. He's proving me wrong, Mourinho, and I'm surprised.
Well, there's reports today that they've opened up conversations about extending his contract, which I'm not. If you're a United fan, you might, obviously on the surface you'd say that's good because Mourinho he does win. He does find ways to make teams. Actually, what Mourinho does better than almost anyone else is he takes teams that are at. If you let's call Real Madrid, because they're the current defending champions of the Champions League, let's give them like a 0 to 100 ranking. They're 100. He takes teams that are 85s, which I think United's about an 85, right? When you compare them, if you consider Real Madrid 100, using kind of FIFA rankings here.
Yeah.
He takes those 85s and he's able to win big titles with them, whereas most people take the 85s and they kind of flounder in that second place sort of zone, which is great if you're like a 63, but for an 85 they usually aspire to be a little bit better. So that's what Mourinho does really well, and I think that's what he's doing with United. He's identified what the previous two managers could not, is that United is not United of 1999. They're not the great United of the mid-2000s. They are an 85 United. They're not a 100 United. And he's figured that out and figured out that the way to do that is to do exactly what he did with Inter and make them just a defensive juggernaut and be able to just completely destroy any flow in games and take more fancied teams and grind them into bits and get the result. And that's what he's doing with United. It's not something that many people are going to take. This is not going to be a beloved team. You don't look at that Inter Champions League team unless you're a hardcore Inter fan and love it, because they weren't fun to watch. They weren't exciting at all. They kind of played they played very negative football, but at the end of the day, they rose that trophy for the first time in that club's history, and that was all that mattered to Mourinho. And this is all that matters to United fans, I think, after, for them, what is now quite a large slump since they last won significant silverware. They won silverware last year, obviously. They won Europa to get here, but to a United's fans, if they're being honest with you, that's not something that they aspire to. They want to win the Premier League. They want to win the Champions League, and the FA Cup would be fun, but that's just a fun day out for them. Even that's a little below. So what he's doing, reluctantly, I'll say this as my City hat goes off for a second, is very effective for the talent that they have in that club. And I'm fascinated, again, if I can strip away any emotion from my own self and look at it objectively, I am fascinated to see what this derby is going to look like, because it's the epitome of contrasting styles when they play.
And styles make fights.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how you tell me that when you're talking, I was thinking, what's the job of a manager, right? It's not to take a 95 team and make them play a 95. Like, you're basically not influential to the team at that point. It's to take a team that's below in that number and make them play like they're a lot better. It's to take a team that is not necessarily the best players. It's not like Madrid, which position per position, Madrid might have the best players in the world at every single position. We're talking about a team that's not the case. But you analyze your team, you look at what you have, you look at the some strength that you have, of the qualities and the skill set that your players have. You figure out a way, a system, an identity, a style to make them play that highlights those skill set and gets you a better chance to get results. No matter if it's eye-pleasing or not, a manager, a good one, he's the one that adapts what he's doing to what he has.
No, precisely. And again, we keep aspiring. It's like we almost listen to the Guardian podcast and are taking their topics, because they talked about this very thing as well. So this is twice by accident now, because I don't.
Yeah, because I don't listen to it.
Podcast, so
exactly,
it's completely random.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, well, they had an argument about whether style mattered more than results, and it absolutely had to do with Mourinho and United. And the context of them was talking about the 0-0 at Liverpool and how United would look at that and say, well, a point at Anfield is a good result, and we have to just throw any style out the window and just get the job done. And how people forget that Alex Ferguson did similar things in his career. They only remember the swashbuckling kind of performances that United had under him. They forget the fact that every so often he would look at his lineup and say, oh, we've got injury problems right now, we're going down to Arsenal and they're playing pretty well, so we just need to grind one out. That sort of stuff gets forgotten. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And you look at Mourinho, to take it back to him, when's he been at his worst? His absolute worst, his low point of his career was likely Real Madrid. And think about that. He had a team of stars, and he had maybe at that time Madrid is that 95, and he couldn't get them to 100. He could only keep them at that 95 level. They still won some stuff under it, but they didn't do what they expected of Real Madrid.
They won in spite of Mourinho, not because of Mourinho. That's how I see Zidane now. I see Zidane as just getting out of the way of the players and just saying, guys, everything's going to be fine up until you do whatever we ask you to do. Just go ahead. Just do it. And I'm just going to get out of the way.
Precisely. And that's, to use another sport from way back when, if you're old enough to remember the Blue Jays back in the 90s, Cito Gaston was the perfect manager because of exactly that. He had stars and he just got out of their way. That's a local example I'm using there. But in the football sense, to go back to Mourinho, his best performance was likely when he won with Porto, when he won in the Champions League with the ultimate, 70 team that he rose up, right? So that's what he does. And I think about what he's got next for United and for Mourinho, and I think that probably long-term, I don't know whether I would be looking to extend him 6-7 years because I don't think he has that kind of shelf life. But I could see Mourinho, when he gets a few years older, moving into an underachieving national team and winning a World Cup. You know where I could put him right now if I had to obviously
not Canada, not here.
I don't think Mourinho is ever going to go down to a 30 or a 20 or a 2 or whatever.
Hey, FIFA has us as 52. Okay, come on, give us credit.
But I could see him if I were going to pick a national team that wasn't Portugal, because that's the obvious answer for him because he's Portuguese. The Netherlands. An underachieving team that has never exceeded to where people expect them to do, and they would hate it there because they want them to play that 4-3-3 total football stuff, which is got them to a certain point. But I could see him going into a place like that and winning a World Cup and still being hated.
I can see him do it in the 4-4-2 with 2 4s, 2 flat 4s, and a flat 2. That would be the worst for the Netherlands fan. What's the opposite of total football?
Mourinho.
Well, the ether football, the anti-football. I don't know. That would be the Netherlands. Anyway, safe Mourinho is there. But just to finish off on the Champions League before we take a break, Duane, Atletico 0, Karabag 0 in Baku. It got close. We almost had an upset, but this is the first ever point in the Champions League for Karabag, the sole Azerbaijan club to ever participate in the Champions League.
Yeah, Atleti is not. They're not Atleti of the last couple of years, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly why. They have lost a lot of talent over from their peak, which was probably when they were seconds away from winning the Champions League 4 seasons ago now. So that was likely the peak of this group, and I think that Simeone is going to have to refresh that somehow. And it's going to be hard because the key to Atleti has been they don't have the depth of the other clubs that have been playing at their level for as long as they have now, but they have that sort of team spirit and that ability to play for that manager in a way that very few clubs have in the past, and then that core has been very, very good for them. And it's I think that the Atleti fans quite rightly are going to think back very fondly on this as a golden generation, but they're in trouble in the Champions League now to get out, and if they slip out of it, then I think that might signal the end of what has been a remarkable era for a club that really struggled financially and otherwise for a while. Fell quite a ways down the Spanish table to rise up and eventually win it, which, again, we talk about Leicester because we look at the English Premier League a lot more in this part of the world, but that win by Atleti to win the La Liga, again, was that 4 seasons ago now? That was every bit as remarkable as Leicester's win in my mind, and something to value. And now that we're seeing, I think, the beginning of the end for a great team, something that we should reflect back on it and put into proper context.
We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we will talk about Landon Donovan, president of the United States Soccer Federation.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at Soccer Today SPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.
And we're back on Soccer Today. Duane, apparently Landon Donovan is weighing the possibility of launching himself into the bucket, into the ocean, out of the ledge, and trying to get himself elected president of the United States Soccer Federation.
Yeah, as Grant Wall was putting that out last night, suggesting that Landon Donovan is seriously considering a run for the USSF presidency, which says a couple things to me. First off, we'll talk about it in its merits in a second, but just the symbolism of it, I think, tells me something really strong, and that is that Sunil's time is up. That if you're getting guys as high profile as Landon Donovan sort of making noise, he should probably jump before he's pushed. He will run again. He probably has the votes again to win within the politics of U.S. soccer, but he has lost the moral authority, I guess, the sort of the inspirational authorities, maybe a better way to put it, to truly run U.S. soccer at any level in any effective way right now. And if you're a true leader and you truly believe in the product moving forward, in the sport moving forward, I think you need to recognize, if you're Sunil, that the time has come, and he's had a very long run there, so that's especially the case. And anytime you've run an organization for as long as he has, and there's obviously they've done successful things in terms of the financials of the USSF, which is important. You can't have a National Sport Federation, near bankrupt, right? You've got to be profitable at some level, but it's also supposed to be a non-profit, so profitable is the wrong way to put it. You've got to be financially solid, I guess is the better way to put it, and he's done that. But in terms of the ability to lead and the ability to oversee what a lot of Americans are really clamoring for right now, which is a overhaul of their system, I don't think he has the ability to get the ear and to inspire people at the elite level to make changes that they need to change, because they've lost faith in him. And when you have, again, guys like Landon Donovan stepping up and saying they're willing to run, I think that's what it says, Kevin. I have thoughts on whether Landon Donovan should be the guy, which I'll get to in a minute, but I'll let you jump in first.
That's where I was going to go. For me, what Landon Donovan represent is more eyes, a bigger voice, a louder voice, a bigger personality, and someone with a different type of experience at that job, which it's not about Landon Donovan, basically. It's going to be who he surrounds himself with, who's with him, that are actually going to work on his agendas and how to fix, quote-unquote, U.S. soccer. It wouldn't be Landon Donovan, but Landon Donovan could get more people behind him just because of the bigger platform that he will get compared to others that are trying to get that job. So that's what it's about. It's not necessarily about Landon Donovan. If I am Landon Donovan, and I'm not, but if I was, that's how I would look at that situation. I would say, okay, maybe I think change need to be done. Maybe I don't see anyone that can do it. Maybe I don't necessarily think that I can do it daily with the paper and myself writing reform and thinking about what to do with the structure and the pyramid and the sanctioning and the salaries. But maybe I know the right people, though. And maybe I can put myself in a situation where I'm the guy who gets elected, and I can delegate the right people to deal with the right situations. If I'm Landon Donovan, that's maybe how I assess the situation.
Yeah, he absolutely should be involved in some capacity. Whether he's the right man to lead it, I have doubts, and that's based on his experience. I mean, he's just recently retired. I don't necessarily know whether he has done enough work at a management level, or any work at a management level for that matter, to allow him to very effectively jump into a role like that without a significant learning curve attached. And I'm not sure this is the time or place for significant learning curve being attached to the USSF president, Kevin. So I do think that whoever does become the USSF president should be reaching out to guys like Landon Donovan in particular as well, to make sure that they stay involved, particularly at the technical level and at the inspirational level of the game. But I think there are former players that are a little bit older than Donovan that are a little bit more experienced. Reyna, for instance, jumps out at me that there might be better choices here that are guys that have put in the work at a management level that could step in and sort of do both sides of the job, because there is a second side. We think the soccer element, and we talk about that on shows because that's sexier, but there is sort of a daily grind, management, financial responsibility, like overall overseeing the entire organization, right down to like the stuff that has nothing to do with national teams and
it's
results,
basically
right?
a big multinational company the way it's run, because it has multiple divisions, it has multiple different sections of the company. Like you have an HR segment, you have like payrolls, you know what I mean? It's basically just a big company. It deals in soccer and development of soccer and the United States Soccer Federation, you know? But that's what it is. It's basically a corporate world.
Yeah, and you're also going to have someone that, and this is the sleazier aspect of the job too, and this is where it gets tricky, because you want to sort of move away from the more sleazy elements of what FIFA and soccer federations have become over the years, but at the same time, you need to recognize that there are politics involved in elite sport at a world level in anything that's, you know, in any sport anywhere, and in soccer in particular, right? So with the 26 bid still ongoing, you don't want someone in charge of the U.S. Federation that really has no clue how these politics work if you want to win that bid. So that's another factor to think. I just think you want a little more experience in Landon Donovan per se. But I think that maybe, and this is pure speculation here, that maybe he's putting his name out there and allowing this rumor to go forth, not so much for him to run, but to set himself up to get involved and also to send a message that it's time for a new leader. And if I'm going to put my name out there, then I'm saying that. Like, that's absolutely 100% the message that you're sending out with that is step aside, Neil. That's what he's, to me, saying, and what this means as much as anything else.
Two other tidbits of information before we wrap the show, Duane. Today, Monday, there will be a press conference in Atlanta by MLS, and apparently Atlanta will host the 2018 MLS All-Star Game.
Ooh, shocking.
Right? Not necessarily shocking when you've seen the attendance and the Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Yeah. What team will do? Obviously, if they're going to play it there, they're not changing the format anytime soon either. They'll be bringing in a big team, and yeah, I'm sure that they'll try and make everyone think that it's either Real Madrid or Barcelona, and then in the end it'll be someone else perhaps. But they got Real Madrid last time, so we'll see. I doubt it'll be Real Madrid twice, but I don't know who would come in this time. I'm surprised City hasn't played an All-Star game actually yet, and they're due
maybe it's them.
They are due to come back to North America. It's been 3 years since they did their tour. They were in the Asia last year. So, yeah, that's not a bad shout, particularly the way they're playing right now for Man City to be the opponent. So that's a good suggestion there. Juve has maybe it'll be a club like that. It'll be someone different that's also at that level. But we'll talk about that sort of briefly and dismissively when it comes around. But certainly Atlanta, in terms of the attendance and the excitement around that, is a logical place for it to go. There is probably maybe a little more interest than I normally have to find my way down there because to see that stadium. But I'd still rather see it for an actual game that mattered. At any rate, yeah, that's interesting. Real quickly, it's not on the lineup, and I didn't mention it, but I did want to give a quick promotion now that if you're in the Toronto area this weekend and you're looking for something to do on Saturday, the League One Ontario Championship game does take place. Woodbridge versus Oakville. Oakville won the championship a couple years ago. That is sort of the ashes of what were the Toronto Lynx team at one point. So those that have really long memories there will maybe be interested in going out and seeing what was the Lynx and whether they can win a second League One Ontario championship. Woodbridge, a historic club in this part of the world, this part of the country. Woodbridge has always been very good. Obviously, for those that know the geography of Toronto, Woodbridge is an excessively Italian part of the city. It is a very Italian club, very Italian field. When you go and work those games up there, usually they have to feed them. That's part of the League One Ontario standards, right? You have to provide a meal at the end of the game for the players and the officials and the game managers. Most places just order pizza. Nah, not at Woodbridge. proper, authentic Italian pasta. It is the best place to go work. So that game is Saturday. Check out the League One Ontario website, league1ontario.com. That's one like the number. Check that out if you want more information. But certainly I encourage you to go out and support local soccer if you can this weekend. The winner, too, gets a berth in next year's Voyageurs Cup.
And as well, more MLS-centered, TAM might go from 1 to 1.5 million next year, opening up possibilities and opening up the depth of rosters across the league.
Yeah, this is MLS's TAM, and it's worked. I'll give it credit. It has increased the level of play across the league. It has allowed a team like Toronto, I think, to have enough.
Vasquez is, like, for me, the best example of TAM money in the entire league.
And it is given, okay, I am not going to go so far as to suggest that I think TFC has the ability to win the CCL. I don't think they do yet. But I think TFC has the ability to compete a lot better in the CCL than most MLS teams have in the past. And I appreciate having said that I'm talking to a guy in Montreal. I was sitting beside you for the final. I was there. I saw it. But they got some luck in the draw. I think most people can acknowledge that. And when I'm talking about competing in the CCL, I'm talking about competing, against the top Mexican teams. Again, I still think Toronto's a step below them. But you add another $1.5 million player to that roster next year, if they can keep the same group together, then we're getting some interesting conversations. And, there was a conversation that happened in Toronto yesterday that had a reporter asked Javenko whether Javenko was saying that he still wanted to have an Italian call-up. And then the reporter made some kind of comment about, well, most players that are called up in your position are coming from like lower level Serie A teams. And don't you think maybe if you wanted to play for Italy that you should have stayed in Italy? And his response was Toronto would not be relegated in Serie A, that they would probably be in around 10th, 11th, 12th. And that, of course, caused a lot of people here to get their, the Italians are very proud about Serie A, and they get a little defensive sometimes when someone suggests that it isn't the greatest team in the world or league in the world, like any nationality. I shouldn't single out Italians. And it caused some debate here. But the point that I made very briefly after that is that it doesn't friggin' matter where Toronto would finish in Serie A because they're never going to play there. What matters is what they're going to do in the CCL. And that, to me, is the measure. And I'm very, very curious to see. I'm jumping ahead a step here because there's a whole playoffs to play first. I appreciate. But I found myself thinking more and more about the Champions League early next winter or mid next winter when it will start back up. And been very interested to see what TFC does in that, almost more than the playoffs. And that probably makes me a bad fan, but it's a very intriguing thought exercise to see that. And that's what I think about that.
No, it will be interesting to follow to see if there's other rules or
but
amount that have changed.
It's a good idea.
No, it's exactly. We appreciate and it's kind of true. Like, if you don't want to add in a 4th or 5th or 6th DP slot, what else can you do? Well, if you don't want to raise the cap for everyone, you find a way to get teams players they want and make them fit in the cap,
I get TAM from, like, when TAM was first announced, I, like many people, advocated that it should be just make the cap bigger. Like, that's kind of what my position was. Now they can't just make the cap bigger because the cap is mandated by this current CBA.
Because New England, because other teams like that.
Well, yeah. I mean, what TAM does is it forces every team. Actually, TAM reflects that. It reflects the fact that there's cheap owners, right? Because TAM isn't the owner's money. DPs are the owner's money. The owners pay for the DPs. The league does not. The league pays for TAM. So it does force or give the opportunity, if to use a more positive spin on it, for less wealthy owners, cheap owners, to spend money on decent players. They're still going to be a step below the teams that have those decent players plus DPs. So there always going to be that gap there. There is an extension of, a have and have not situation going there. But TAM is really an elaborate way to both increase the quality of player and also keep that parity thing going. Because if they didn't if they just added another DP, all that would happen, and I'd be okay with this, but all that would happen is that the top teams would get even further away from the bottom teams in MLS, and they, as we well know, do not want to see that. But TAM does sort of make it even so every team can add another player at that level.
Yeah, no, exactly. So if that grows next year, we might have 1 or 2 more players per team that are in that 4th to 8th spot in the roster that could make a big difference next year in Major League Soccer, and that is something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to see them. I don't like the restrictions on it. That's what frustrates me. I think that TAM right now, you have to use it to bring someone in. I would like to see them just say that there's this pocket of money that can be used to retain or whatever. So because there is a certain value in keeping players around too that might be going on. But I don't know. There's a lot of debate to be had about that, whether they should be selling players and stuff like that. So look, the more good players coming in, the better. And again, when it comes to like the very top teams in the league, and I'm not just talking about Toronto here, but the very top teams in general, when they're competing in CCL, to be able to add another player at that level is going to give them a better chance to actually be competitive in Mexico when they play those Mexican teams.
Yeah, no, exactly. All right. As always, you can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Laramee. And until tomorrow, with a preview of the weekend, well, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.